So let's talk about malaria. Malaria is a disease that has been bringing much suffering to humanity for millennia. And at one point in time, Europeans had a lot of problems with malaria. Americans suffered with malaria. But then eventually, people began to research malaria, and a scientist realized that malaria comes from a parasite. And then another scientist realized, he discovered that this disease comes from mosquitoes. It comes from mosquitoes. And so scientists began to devise ways to cure people of malaria. And so they came up with medicine that could get rid of it. By the 1950s, the United States pretty much purged itself of malaria, and malaria really isn't much of a problem anymore, at least in the Western world. And so we have come up with medicines that can defeat malaria for the most part. Medication like chloroquine is probably the most used medicine against malaria, if not one of the most used to fight against malaria. And there is a continent that is famous for still suffering from malaria, and that is Africa. I'm sure all of you guys already know this. The problem is that chloroquine has to be used consistently in order to fight against malaria and in order to prevent the symptoms from making people suffer. So if you have malaria, you have to continuously take chloroquine in order to prevent the symptoms from manifesting and, from making you suffer. And chloroquine can be expensive for a lot of people in Africa. But the World Health Organization, Big Pharma, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they all insist that in order to help people with malaria, in order to cure people with malaria, we have to give them the pharmaceutical drugs like chloroquine. But there have been some very compassionate people who have said that there is a better way to help Africans rid themselves of this terrible disease. And it's not the big pharmaceutical medicines. It's not the medicines that come from Big Pharma. It's a much more economic, much more affordable and cheaper way to help people with malaria. And that is an herb. An herb that grows in the wild in Africa. It is called Artemisia. It is grown all throughout Africa. For the most part, it's grown in South Africa. It's grown in North Africa, East Africa. It's grown in Ethiopia. It is quite ubiquitous in the continent of Africa. And it is extremely cheap. You spend $5 for a big pack of Artemisia tea. You drink the tea and you don't have the symptoms. Many Africans, and really an innumerable amount of Africans, have testified, they have attested to the effectiveness of Artemisia. They say we take the tea multiple times a day and we don't have malaria. Whereas Africans who have been taking the pharmaceutical medication like chloroquine, it'll help them, but to a certain extent. Basically, they'll take the medication and the symptoms will be curtailed, but the malaria, the disease itself, is still present in their systems. So it gets rid of the symptoms temporarily, but it doesn't really kill the actual disease itself unless you take it over and over again. And even then, it may still stay in your system. Whereas with Artemisia, it extirpates the disease from your system. It gets rid of it. It purges it away from your body. It is extremely cheap. You don't have to see a pharmacist to get it. And you just pay $5. You get a big pack of tea and it cures you. Many Africans have attested to this, but yet the World Health Organization has gone against the use of Artemisia to cure people from malaria, even though you have numerous reputable doctors and scientists who will affirm the effectiveness of Artemisia. And the pharmaceutical companies will go against it. Why? Not because they really care about the people of Africa. The Artemisia has no side effects. It's a tea. It's an herbal tea. You can buy seeds for Artemisia on Amazon, for crying out loud. There's no side effects. And yet these big pharmaceutical companies will lobby against the use of Artemisia. Why? Because of big funds going into the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization goes against the use of Artemisia because of the major funders that support the WHO, the WHO. And at one point in time, the majority of the funds that supported the World Health Organization came from the tax dollars of the governments of member states of the World Health Organization. But now the great majority of the funds come from private investors, one of them being Bill Gates. So that really is the reason why they lobby against the use of Artemisia. In fact, in France, where a lot of the research for Artemisia has been done, has actually outlawed the selling of Artemisia. It's outlawed it. Even though there is no side effects, there's no negative side effects, it's a tea. It's a tea. In fact, I think it's part of the same family as chamomile. And yet they have outlawed the selling of Artemisia. And there's only one reason for that. It's because of money and big pharma, Bill Gates, and all of these things. And so this is really one example of just how evil big pharma can be, just how evil these ultra-capitalistic, these capitalist-obsessed corporatists can be. And it really shows that they don't really care about human life. It's as though they're like Jim Jones. They'll say, don't worry, there's only, you can go ahead and drink this punch. And all these people are saying, well, I don't want to drink the punch, there's poison in it. And the cult leader says, well, don't worry, it's only 1% cyanide. 99% of this punch is completely okay. It's okay. He goes, well, I don't want to take that. It doesn't help me. It's going to kill me. Oh, no, it's okay. Only 1% poison. And a lot of the people who make it out to be that the big pharmaceutical companies, they can do no wrong. They're looking out for our interest. It's like those people have decided to drink the Kool-Aid. Kind of like it's kind of like someone saying, there's a big hurricane and you should stay inside. You should be safe. And you say, no, I don't want to stay inside. No, it's a really, really bad hurricane. You should stay inside. So then you stay inside and only 1% of the town has died because of the hurricane, because they didn't listen to the rules. So then you get angry and you say, only 1% of the town has died. It wasn't that bad. Well, it's because you stayed inside of your house. And then you tell this person, hey, if I gave you some punch and it only had 1% of cyanide, would you drink it? And this person says, I'd gladly drink it. Pretty crazy, right? And you could see the connection with the insanity of those who would never attribute wrong to the big pharmaceutical companies or to the World Health Organization. But believe it or not, a lady told me this. She said that coronavirus only kills 1% of the population. And I said, well, if someone told you that a big bowl of punch only had 1% of cyanide, would you drink it? And she said, to continue my financial stability, I would gladly drink it. You see, it's not just the left where you'll find those who will drink the punch. You can also find the same sort of insanity on the right. If people in Africa are drinking Artemisia tea and it's saving lives, then we should support it. And if the World Health Organization goes against the consumption of Artemisia because they want to get money from Bill Gates, well then the World Health Organization is evil. in that regard, it's evil. And if someone is saying, don't worry, coronavirus ain't that bad, it only kills 1%, and then people go out and they end up getting coronavirus and they end up dying, well, those people who push those people to disobey the rules in regards to this disease, the safety measures being done to mitigate the spread of this contagion, those people are also evil. Anyway, just giving you guys some of my thoughts. Hope you guys have enjoyed this message. Hope you guys have learned something from this message. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.